This video is a continuation of Arnold Chiari malformation. There are four types, types 1, 2, 3, and 4. Type 4 involves the bottom part of the brain, bottom back part of the brain, which is the cerebellum. So there is cerebellar development which is lacking here and it's incompatible with life, so the child is dead in Chiari malformation type 4. In type 3, it is in the back of the brain. So there is occipital encephalocele and there is abundant neurological deficit. Type 2 loss of curves. So the pontine flexure is failing. So the pons is okay. Like for instance, like uterus has anteverted position, right? So that's one of the reasons why it does not descend down into like through the introitus, through the vagina. It does not come down, right? Yeah, the same thing over here too. The pontine flexure is responsible to hold the whole brainstem in position. But here there is failure of such flexure. The curve is gone. What happens because of that? The fourth ventricle will elongate and then the inferior vermis, which is part of the cerebellum, is going to descend down. The pons will descend down. The medulla also descend down. Where does it descend into? Into the cervical canal, which is nothing but the canal formed by the cervical vertebra, so like under the base of the brain. So it's going to descend down into the cervical canal. So because all these substances usually usually is not present in the cervical canal, it does not occupy the cervical canal usually, but now it is occupying, so it causes widening of the cervical canal. Well, the medical term given to widening of the cervical canal is syringomyelia. Syringomyelia. Okay. So one more thing which happens with the brain stem is there is kinking of the brain stem and breaking of the quadrigeminal plate or the tectum. So there is kinking and breaking. Kinking and breaking because of loss of curves. Just remember it that way. Kinking of the brain stem, breaking of the quadrigeminal plate or the tectum. It's all because of loss of curve, which is the pontine flexure. So type 2, so there are two main differences between type 1 and type 2. Okay. Type 1 presents during adolescence or adulthood. Type 2 occurs approximately in the newborn period. And another thing is type 1 is not associated with hydrocephalus, but type 2 is associated with the progressive hydrocephalus. We know why, because like the fourth ventricle itself is going to go into a bony cavity like a cervical canal, which is why. Okay, so type 2 is over. We'll see some points about type 1. In type 1, the deformity consists of displacement of the cerebellar tonsils into the cervical canal. So in type 1, okay, so while going from type 1, 2, 3, 4, the severity as we can see is keep on increasing. Okay, so in type 1, only the cerebellar tonsils are displaced into the cervical canal. In type 2, as we can see, the pons, the inferior vermis, and the medulla are pushed into the cervical canal. In type 3, there is occipital encephalocele, meaning the occipital lobe is pushed down. Type 4, cerebellum is not developing at all. Okay, it's the result of that is death, obviously. Moving on to another malformation, which is Dandy-Walker malformation. Dandy Walker, so like Dandy is a person who needs a walker to walk because he cannot walk because ataxia means cerebellum, right? So cerebellar problem has ataxia, which is why the Dandy is not able to walk. That's how I remember it. Dandy Walker malformation is characterized by hypoplasia, meaning reduced multiplication, or absence of cerebellar vermis. So there is hypoplasia or absence of cerebellar vermis in case of Dandy-Walker malformation. Along with that, it is associated with fourth ventricle is like a cavity which is very close to cerebellum, right? So because the cerebellum is not there, fourth ventricle is going to take over the space. So there is dilatation of the fourth ventricle in the posterior fossa. Posterior fossa is nothing but the room of the cerebellum. Okay, so the dilatation is called the cystic dilatation of fourth ventricle. Okay, there is no hydrocephalus. There is agenesis of corpus callosum, which is nothing but the fibers which connect the right and left side of the brain. That is corpus callosum. That is not going to be formed. Cerebellum is not formed. Corpus callosum is not formed. What else? There is increased size of the head along with a prominent occiput. Why is there a prominent occiput? We'll see later.